So please introduce yourself, John.
Yeah, right. Well, my name is John Novis. I'm 70 years old now, and I've been working with Greenpeace actually for 26 years, and now retired from Greenpeace. But my whole career basically has been involved in photography. I left school at 16 with very basic qualifications, and went straight into the industry in London and in the commercial field and fashion. I mean, in those days you became a studio assistant and you did everything from darkroom, color processing, lighting, studio, help, assisting photographers at everything. But it was an incredible experience. It was like a sort of a apprenticeship, really, although it's not a kind of an organized one. You kind of do it yourself. But it gave me a huge grounding in photography, technical and commercial. And then I'm being brief now because I could go on, but I'm jumping the years. And then later on, as a mature student, I did a course at Trent, and a very controversial course. It was brought over from America, and it was a photography course, but it was unique in the sense that it focused much more on fine art and kind of progressive photography and history of photography. And in those days, most photography courses were kind of career orientated and would be doing exactly what I did for my apprenticeship. Anyway, this course was an incredible experience, and it changed my total mind about photography. I never really thought about it before. Photography as changing people's minds or introducing new concepts rather than it being a kind of tool for making money, a commercial commodity, if you like. So a vehicle, then, if you like, to show off product that would eventually be making money. Anyway, so I did freelance work after that, and it was kind of more orientated to what I learned on the course. And then I got to Greenpeace through a very different means. I started off as a freelancer in London, and I realized at Greenpeace they were outsourcing a lot of stuff, and because of my commercial background, I said, you don't have to, you can do all this in house for much less money and more protecting your own gear, your own kind of customized images, etc. And slowly, of course, I became full time because this was a big addition to Greenpeace Communications, yeah. And but part of me thought, well, this is Greenpeace, and it's more kind of orientated to photojournalism. And I didn't kind of, I wasn't experienced as a photojournalist. But slowly, as I worked with Greenpeace, I realized that it was much more orientated to my commercial background, because I realized that when Greenpeace is doing actions, they'd be deciding what color gear they would be wearing, what would be the font size on it. So the whole thing was highly constructed, which of course is what commercial photography is. So I kind of thought, actually, I do fit in here in a way. And then also, I felt also my knowledge and experience from fine art photography and also fitted in there, because it was always Greenpeace was always looking for new creative ideas to campaign on. And so I felt very at home at Greenpeace so yeah, I progressed through the year, ended up at the head of photography in Greenpeace International, and moved over to Amsterdam to the head office. And it was a great experience. It wasn't just commissioning photographers, it was representing the organization through images. They're giving talks to National Geographic societies, that sort of thing, and competitions, World Press Photo. It really went from strength to strength. yeah, I kind of retired and felt it was a job well worth doing, you know what I mean? And I kind of keep in touch with what's going on, but I feel that the shift is now much more in social media with and the perhaps the kind of the single image has been moved a bit around a bit, and it's more kind of multiple images and multiple media kind of stuff. So, which is sort of, I feel like a good time to leave because that's really not my world. So there you go.
This is really there's so much stuff that I didn't know about you.
Whoa.
And also like how much, like thinking about it, like the time span that you spent in the organization, it's really amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
26 years, this is a very long time, which like and you witnessed, and this I find really interesting, the switch from analog to digital imaging.
yeah. I didn't.
How did that go?
Yeah, I did. How did that go? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't a sort of an overnight thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, it it's difficult to sort of actually pinpoint a time how it went. I mean, it was kind of coming from the agencies. It was coming from the industry, really, and suddenly the agencies were kind of working with floppy disks. You know what I mean? They were still the film was still around,
Yeah.
but there was a sort of a real pressure to get stuff scanned. But the whole digital thing fitted Greenpeace perfectly. I mean, if you've got a ship in the Antarctic, if you're just shooting on film, that news will take weeks and weeks to get there because you just can't get a film off from the Antarctic. So the whole satellite technology which went with it, and I think the first shift was, and it's when I kind of started, was Leafax, AP Leafax machines, where you can make a dark room on the ship and then make a print, and then that print was scanned on the ship and then sent to a satellite and then directly to AP agency. And it was a long process. I mean, it's a rolling drum that scanned the print. It took a long time. And then the rolling drum in the AP was repeating the same process as it was coming through. So they would, in fact, AP would end up with a print. It was still analog, but the whole thing was shifted. Whether it was digital or analog, I don't know, but it was it was the beginning of an analog digital start, and then it kind of went from there, where we were still using film and everything, but it was processed in house and then scanned on the scanning took ages on a Nikon Cool Scan. Yeah, that was it. And then not put onto a printer and put onto a floppy disk, and then the floppy disk would be taken by motorcycle courier to AP. This is in London. AP or Reuters were just around the corner, so it's still quite a thing. But the shift was really changing the way it worked. I mean, I made this note for later on, but I think I might as well say it now. But
yeah,
I think we can argue that Brent Spar, do you remember Brent Spar?
Yeah, of course.
Which is a major, in my opinion, there's three really major activities in Greenpeace while I was there, from the 89 to 2015. One was World Park Antarctica, which was in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's why I joined Greenpeace, because there was so much demand on photography coming out from. Then there's Brent Spar, which was a mega action that was one of the biggest actions Greenpeace ever really did. It went on for days and days, and in especially in the British press, and Shell was really shamed and blah blah blah, and that never happened before. And then there was the Arctic 30, which was a 3-month thing where they're in a detention,
Yeah,
terrorist, charged
yeah,
with terrorism in Russia.
yeah, 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 I remember.
I say major, but I suppose I mean in photo or visual terms, they were the three main. Anyway, the Brent Spar, which is in the middle, which was 85, I think. Yeah. Or was it? Sorry, was it 95?
85? No,
No, no,
95.
95. Sorry, 95.
95.
Cut that. Yeah, yeah, 95. This was the real full-on digital because we had David Sims on the Spar with a digital camera, and I beg your pardon, no, he had a film camera,
Mhm,
but the fact was he had a data and he had a scanner,
mhm,
and and they had a satellite on the Spar. So we were able to get pictures every day from activity, like backstories of life on the Spar. Then the Shell coming in and
mhm.
kind of trying to remove Greenpeace, and then all the time the water cannon coming on it. So it was a daily kind of news thing.
Well,
Simply
95,
because
that's crazy. That was already possible. That's really amazing that that was actually.
it changed it. I mean, we were just coming in everywhere and working night, and we were just sort of because these images were literally being fed in
Mhm,
digitally,
mhm,
and even AP and Reuters were just saying, "You're ahead of us, you guys. We're not even working like that because it was a satellite technology,
mhm.
the squasher, that was
Yeah.
it was enabled compression of video and film to that wasn't able to then be sent sent. Otherwise the files would be too big to be sent.
Mhm,
So yeah, that was to me a kind of change, the revolution of analog digital, if you know what I mean. And
mhm,
shortly after that we started to use digital cameras and then full on digital. Yeah.
mhm.
So yeah, Brent Spar was a turning point.
That's an amazing story. I didn't know that that happened actually
Oh
with.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, you could argue it won the campaign. I mean, I
Mhm,
know it was controversial, the winning of it. There was lots of arguments about it, but from a news point of view, if we didn't have that technology, the squasher and the
mhm,
scanning and all that, then we, the news just wouldn't come out.
mhm. Wow. And I have like a question about, because you said it before, like you hinted at it in a way, about image control, how how important it always was to create the image, like to be able to control the representation of yourself in the media as a witness to
Mhm.
environmental damage or stuff, and how that's sort of related to your work in advertisements. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate on
no,
that a
sure,
little
yeah.
bit? Like how, I mean, I of course, I mean, I did that too, and all the, and then like to be part of the creation of those images
Yes.
in the fight for sustainability. And in a way, it was always, for me, it was always a fight against banners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I had a
Because
big problem with banners a lot of the time, you know.
in the end, it
I mean,
has.
I used to do presentations to campaigns and well, media really, because of the banner problem. And I mean, working in Greenpeace was interesting for me because there's, I know it sounds a little bit pompous, but most people are visually illiterate, and
Mhm,
and it's not a bad. It's not like saying, it's not an insult or anything like that. It's just that it's a really kind of interesting idea, but most people think photography, everybody has a camera, especially now. I mean, if you've got a mobile phone.
yeah.
So there's this sort of concept that if you have a camera, you're a photographer.
Mhm,
But of course, photography is a skill. But I think most people don't quite understand it. You have a camera, so you're a photographer. And so, working in Greenpeace, I worked with a lot of that kind of that kind of sensibility, if you like. So one thing was that people couldn't understand why we were paying a very high rate for a professional photographer when a friend of mine who's a photographer can do the same job. And I used to say, yeah, but your friend of photographer is not a photographer. Say, well, yeah, they are photographers. Say, well, do they earn a living out of photography? Well, no, but they're still a photographer. And it's a stupid argument.
Yeah.
And so I used to do these presentations, like, which were based on photo literacy, really, and simple things like the banner. You know, people would always design a very long banner, put too many words in it to start with, and so I said, well, if it's a long banner, the photographer's got to come right back. And so when you come right back, you just see a strip of a banner and tiny faces, activists, and then a big sky and a big foreground. You know, I used to do it. And that this doesn't work. And I said, why not just forget banners? And I give an example. I give a beautiful example. I always remember it. They designed a banner in the Netherlands. I think it was Japanese, something to do with Japan. It could have been nuclear or something. And this ridiculous long banner. And then they wore masks. The activists wore masks with a Japanese sun, kind of the Japanese sun on the flag. And I remember a simple message like "Stop Nuclear" or something like that. And they didn't use the Greenpeace image. The press used an AP, I think, photographer, and it was just a picture of Hester, just a girl with a mask, just her face. And it was in the newspaper, and it looked fantastic, powerful. You know, she was lovely. And then I put it next to this banner, long banner with the sky, and I said, "Look, this is visual literacy. You know, which picture would, if you were scanning a newspaper, which would you read this article, seeing this girl with a mask or the banner? You know, and of course, the mask and the girl draws you in, and it just went on like that. I mean, that was just it was so many instances where, you know, you have to sort of really educate Greenpeace, the campaigns particularly, into color, positioning of things, time of day you're going to do it. You know, it's so much involved. I mean, it came from the commercial background, of course, you know, of how to get the best image, the most powerful image.
Is there some standards?
Sorry?
No, I said, like, in the creation of images, there are some standards that are always true, like the rule of thirds, or specific colors that draw you in, or identification with a person in the image, like making it emotional and stuff like that.
But yeah, I mean, I would always say to people, you know, it's always with photography, it's people. If you scan a newspaper, this was in the days of news, but you know, like 95% of images, advertising, news, whatever, will be people. It'd be very, very little landscape, or, you know what I mean? And so Greenpeace has to be the same, because people understand that, you know. And if you see an image of an activist, that people really identify with that. The message comes really across, because it's just an image. The text will explain everything about where that person's standing there and all that.
Yeah.
The photograph doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So banners are a lot of the time pretty useless. I mean, banners were good for passers-by, but often Greenpeace used to use banners in remote locations, you know, like on an island. You know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's complex, but it goes back to saying how I found it interesting. My commercial background fitted in, fitted, you know, was very to Greenpeace, you know.
I mean, that this is also what I found really interesting about the history of Greenpeace, that it was always really connected to images, like how we're sort of building up the organization and the how do you say that? Legacy, in a way, the legacy
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the actions and like the witnessing and the making things visible. So you could say that the the strategy of visualization was always sort of also political issue to make things visible and tangible and understandable to the public.
sure, sure. Well, yeah. This is yeah. My feeling is that it was the Vega in Mororoa with David McTaggart that started the whole thing, really. The story goes that the Vega was going into the French nuclear testing zone, and the French Navy came aboard and beat McTaggart up. And Anne-Marie Hall, I think, took secret photos while this was going on. We know the story. I mean, for the interview's sake, and I'm being very brief, but the film was smuggled out, and then later was developed and given to the press, and it revealed that the French Navy were completely lying about the whole thing.
Really?
Well, they were saying, yeah, I mean, they were kind of elaborating on it, that it wasn't fisticuffs, it wasn't a brutal takeover from the ship. It was all, because there was no evidence. It was just their word against Greenpeace, and that the Taggart slipped out, but it was nothing to do with the Navy anyway. And of course, the photographs revealed something quite differently, and so the press immediately, said that the French Navy were lying, and so the story went. It went really big, and of course, because of those photos, Greenpeace could then campaign much more on a nuclear testing, because everybody started talking about French nuclear testing, and it was pretty unknown. It was these simple photos that really were responsible for breaking the story, not just of the French line, but the whole controversy about French nuclear testing. So that's, and I think Greenpeace then thought, bloody hell, the power of photography. I mean, it really, it is like kind of bearing witness. It changes the whole ball game. And so I think after that, the organization decided to visualize literally everything it did. And there's I mean, examples. Later on it goes into whaling and the baby seals.
Yeah.
Now, baby seal clubbing is so shocking, to see it, and to see the activists holding the image of the activists holding the seals away from the hunters, the clubbers. Clubbers, that doesn't sound right.
These days, it doesn't anymore.
They're the hunters. Incredibly emotive imagery. And of course, a brand new story like the Mororoa. It was a brand new story. It wasn't something that was picked up and, not this again. It was like, what? How could that, what's going on here? This is, and then of course, as with the whaling, these images were so emotive that they could use to fundraise. I mean, I think the fundraising, these pictures were responsible for huge membership.
Yeah.
Just the pictures. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just text and someone saying, yeah, we went to Canada and blah, 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 and it was terrible. Yeah. People wouldn't, it was the pictures that did it.
Yeah. They used it for such a long time. They used it still in the 2010s, or maybe even still using it. I don't know. But those images.
Well, it's probably not so much in the same way. And don't forget, in those days, I mean, Reuters and AP wouldn't dream of tackling a story like that. Again, it's in remote location, you know, in Canadian Arctic, for instance, the BBC, and whaling, a Southern Ocean. I mean, you can only get that with a ship. I mean,
Yeah.
writers don't have that kind of budget. Oh, well, let's take a ship to the Southern Ocean to do a story. They never do it. So these stories, well, Greenpeace owned. I mean, they were Greenpeace stories, but then
Mm.
you know, they were brand new stories. So the agencies were really fascinated. I mean, a little bit hesitant, and it's always been like that with Greenpeace because Greenpeace Images belong to an NGO. So
Yeah.
there's always this sort of question mark of news and truth and bias and propaganda, blah blah blah. And so there's always a bit of a hesitancy, but I don't think they can resist certain stories, if you know what I mean, because they know
Yeah.
they will sell. So yeah, I mean it's really founded on imagery, and I think it's gone all the way like that. I mean, I do know that it's budget constraint. Even National Geographic have a budget, and things like there's three key places in the world. There's the Amazon, um, South Pacific, and the Arctic, and they're just too remote. They're too expensive to go to.
Yeah.
But perhaps not so much the Amazon now, but certainly the other two. And but even so, um, the stories, yeah, stories from these parts of the world are only handled possibly by Greenpeace.
That's
I mean,
amazing.
things are changing, obviously, but over the course of time I was there, yeah, anything, it was brand new stuff.
So, my follow-up question to that would be, because this is so amazing to think about how much those images have changed back then, because they were so hard to attain because the areas where they were taken were so secluded and far away, and there were not many images that that were taken at the time in relation to today, like where you have so many images all over the place with Insta, with Facebook, with all the social media. Like it's a whole, like our whole world is depending on images. Has that, how has it changed for, I mean, it's quite a wide question.
No,
But
no,
do you think it has changed the approach?
it's a very good question because this was going on when I was there. Um, yeah, this is the kind of perhaps the downside of digital in the sense that it started to put a lot of agencies out of business because as you say, there's a sort of glut of images on the internet, which were either free or very, very kind of low price. So it changes the whole dynamics of the agency industry, and that meant, yeah, basically you just type in anything and there will be loads of images of it. And of course, publications were very happy with this because they could get rid of all their staff photographers to start with, or downsize it. You can't get rid of all of them, but and also they wouldn't have to pay a lot by buying directly from the photographer or the agency. I mean, they could just literally lift them off the internet. Yeah, and say, you know, let's say Amazon Fires, for instance, if a magazine or a newspaper is doing or a website or whatever is doing a story on Amazon Fires, then they can easily, yeah, grab Amazon Fires off the images. But news is news. Now, if there's an Amazon Fire story, it's a bad example. I think actually that's a little bit of a bad example because an Amazon Fire story could easily contain an image off the internet. a generic image, if you like. But let's bring it up to date to bushfire stories, you know.
Yeah.
And this is kind of also happening in not so remote locations. So I'm thinking particularly of the Greek one, which was an award-winning picture of the woman standing in front of her house. Remember that image?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. You can't. It's very difficult to avoid not using a professional image on that. You know, because it's a Greek woman by a Greek house in Greece, and that's pretty hard to find on the internet. And it also would have to name the woman and everything. So it's kind of bad in some ways, but I still think, and Greenpeace again is still surviving on professional imagery, and it's you know, it's a cross between. But even I've noticed even Greenpeace itself is using images off the internet that are not Greenpeace images, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of working all through the industry, including the NGOs. Everybody is working with this new type of massive amounts of imagery available. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it has changed things a lot. It has changed, but I'm not quite sure in. I mean, you know, I suppose you could say it's really affected the profession. You know, a lot of photographers find it quite hard to survive these days because of this, and so the ones that do survive charge huge amounts of money and have specific contracts, exclusive contracts on their pictures, and so it's yeah, it has changed the industry a lot. And yeah, I mean, Greenpeace has adapted. I mean, if I was there now, I'd be adapting with it. But I was at the time, it was changing, and nobody was very happy about it. NGOs or industry, anybody in the profession, the profession wasn't happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar.
I mean, I will add that I used to go every year. It started in 1999. I went every year that I was with Greenpeace. I don't go now because I went to the photo. Have you heard Perpignan, the Visa Paul image?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And when I went in 1998 was the first one I went. In 1999, we actually Greenpeace had a big show. I was interviewed on stage. We had a massive slideshow that Jean-Francois was giving out. I won't go into that story because it's too long. There's a particular reason he really wanted to represent Greenpeace, but it did cause a controversy amongst the more purists there, who were saying, what's happening to Perpignan, because Greenpeace is an NGO. It's not a photojournalism, blah blah blah. Anyway, I forget where this is leading. Well, what it's leading is that was, and when I went in 1998 at the beginning, there was a hall of agencies. I mean, and it was buying and selling place as well for stories. And over the years, that diminished. And I think if you go to now, there probably isn't that store. It's hardly there anymore. So even the profession, and you know, every year there was debates about how we're going to deal with this digital revolution and so on. I always thought Perpignan was a good benchmark to how the industry was going. Yeah.
And now there's the next scare of AI generating pictures.
Yeah, well, that's
happening.
Yeah.
But what I would
let's not go down there because that's.
No. We do it another time. But,
I mean, if it's AI is connected with digital manipulation, which I see, well, then Greenpeace did have. There was huge protocols about that.
Yeah, totally.
Big rules. Any NGO found manipulating their work was a big.
No, of course, that's a completely different approach to.
Yeah. We had problems with that again with the visual illiteracy. Again, people were in certain offices taking out stuff and oh my god, no. Don't do that. Anyway, so
but my next question would be like, what are you still working on now? Because I see that you're still very engaged and pushing a lot of stories and
yeah, well, I am still. What's interesting is I kind of retired and I took a kind of nice break from it. I lived in Thailand for 2 years and just really just chilled out and I still working in photography, but doing little local stories for people. I mean, much more different approach, and then the lockdown came along, then COVID came along, and also I still had my apartment in Amsterdam, and I had to come back for immigration reasons with Brexit. I don't want to go into all that.
Okay.
Anyway, I had to come back, and then lockdown kicked in, and then traveling became a real headache. If you remember it, everybody knows.
Yeah, we've been there.
And so it's gave me a chance to do a project I've been wanting to do for years. I have, as I say, I spent my whole life in photography, and I have a massive amount of negatives and then CDs and hard drives and that full of images, and a lot from Greenpeace. And I've never, well, certainly all the old things I've never scanned. So I got down to this major project of kind of digitizing all my work and re-editing all my work. Because a lot of the stories I did with Greenpeace, like Yellow River and Everett, I mean, amazing trips I went on, they were rush edits at the time, if you know what I mean. They're only picking out a few key pictures, but I was doing a lot of background stuff, people, I mean, working every day, and all that stuff got kind of ignored. And I could never do it while I was working at Greenpeace. Greenpeace was such full on all the time. And so this lockdown gave me all this time to revisit my work. And as I was going along, I was kind of feeding my Facebook and Instagram and all that, and kind of marking certain days with things that are going on environmentally. If there was glacier stories on glacier, the Guardian were doing or something, I would reinforce that. I also was working with the Guardian as well on doing very similar to what we're doing now. I knew Eric there, who's the picture editor, and he wanted me to do a story on the 50th anniversary of Greenpeace in terms of pictures.
Yeah.
So working on that, and it was something I wanted to add. I wanted to develop through that the idea of the difference between photojournalism and photoactivism. And I think Greenpeace was probably a pioneer of photoactivism.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about this very briefly?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Well, it's connected with your question about what I'm working on. The idea that, and I did this through the Guardian piece, the idea that photoactivism is different from photojournalism in a post-production sense. So Greenpeace will commission a photographer to work on an action or background or story, documentary stories, or whatever, reportage. And the same kind of style approach of photojournalism. It's the professional photographer, that hasn't changed. But it was what Green did with the pictures after the all the files were returned to the picture desk, came to the picture desk. Now, with photojournalism, of course, it goes out for newspaper stories, and you know, its life goes away from its origin into the industry. Whereas Greenpeace will do kind of, but it will put it out to the industry, but then certain stuff the industry is not interested. Say a reportage story. It's not so easy for the industry to take, but Greenpeace will use those images to fundraise, to kind of develop on their own website. You know, to use exhibitions, whatever, to basically to promote its own campaign. So the notion of journalism goes, it loses it, because it's not about balanced thinking. It's not about impartial views. It's about a, you know, a certain. It's a campaign. There's no argument, black and white. Climate change is wrong. It's not. Is climate real? Deniers, climate. It's climate change, or it's pollution. So it's using it. I'm not using the word propaganda because it's not the right way. It's using it as a tool for people to act on, or to become members of it. You know what I mean? So it's really an image to save the environment. Whereas journalism isn't. That's not its destination. It's to go into a newspaper or a magazine and to inform. So there's a clear kind of distinction between what the photography Greenpeace was doing and what the industry is doing. If you know what I mean. Although it's still based on professional imagery, still by you know.
It's again connecting to the question that I was asking about image control, like that you're in control of your own representation to use it in
exactly. Well, the photographer's contract is all built around that image control. You know, and it means that we get the pictures, we do what we want with them. It's not the photographer can do what they want with them, but obviously the act of commissioning, you don't get a you get a sympathizer agreement. All the photographers used were kind of sympathetic to what they were photographing. But so it's a win. It's a win. You know, that's why it's important to have industry standard quality in photography. But then we use it to our own, or Greenpeace uses it to its own means and ends. So photoactivity, it's important to me that the photoactivism, because it's not photojournalism, it's photoactivism.
Commissioned work. So
there's
a specific purpose to it, and working
so,
to show a specific content, basically. Also, when you're a photographer, you're creating the image that is needed. Not so much maybe how you would see it. I mean, of course, you use your own. You use your own. How do you say your own point of view to support that.
Your own creativity,
your own creativity, your own point of view, but still you sort of support. You need to. You know that you need to support the issue. You cannot go and show something that's not flattering or not in sense of the higher purpose of the campaign itself. So that's crucial to these kinds of photographs. That was really that was also, I always enjoyed that also when I was able to take pictures for on site. That was that was very that was amazing. Thank you so much. I think that covered all my questions that I had for you.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, it's so much. Well, a great pleasure. And
likewise.